Hi, Sam. How are you doing?
Hey, Mom, how are you?
It's nice to talk to you finally.
Oh, I call you plenty.
Well.
So, I'm working on another video, and I'm doing the most ghetto cities in America. And guess who is number 4?
San Bernardino.
San Bernardino is on the list.
It's on the list, all right.
Yep, it's San Bernardino, so you know what that means.
That means I need to get my hepatitis A shot?
No, that means that we're ghetto.
Yeah. It's ghetto-like out there in places, that's for sure.
Now the world don't move to the beat of just one drum. What might be right for you may not be right for some. A man is born, not a man of means. Then along comes you, and he's like, I'm looking out for me, 'cause it takes ghetto folks, it takes ghetto folks, it takes ghetto folks to ruin the world. The ghetto. Such a powerful word in the American language. Just the word can bring up racial tensions and political arguments. The term originally referred to large Jewish neighborhoods in Europe, and then was used to describe large Jewish neighborhoods in New York City here in America. Then in the early 1900s, the black population began using the word ghetto to describe their own racial segregation. They were being unfairly separated from white communities and protested that they had to live over in the ghetto while white people lived over here in their own part of town. The term stuck. Now, before we get too far, let's define what a ghetto is. This is the actual definition, so let's not start with the negative comments, people. A ghetto is now defined as an urban neighborhood with crime, gang violence, and extreme poverty, and with a significant number of minority citizens living in it. So it's not too hard to measure those things to see which American cities are the most ghetto. To do so, we simply had to measure the places with those things. And the places we'll mention won't be much of a surprise. Let's begin in St. Louis, Missouri. Now, of all the cities we're going to talk about, St. Louis is the most white. Since we're measuring race as part of the actual definition of a ghetto, then the minority population is a big factor. St. Louis ranks 100th of the 218 largest cities we measured. That means St. Louis is about halfway down the list for its minority population size. It's more white than it isn't. But the factors which make St. Louis a true ghetto, according to the definition of a ghetto, is the poverty and the crime. St. Louis, as we've described before on this channel, is the 5th most violent place in America, where killings happen at a rate higher than almost anywhere else in the country per capita, and the poverty rate of St. Louis is 37th highest in the nation. So, all of those factors make St. Louis, or big parts of it, one of America's true, real ghettos. See how that works? Don't be upset, people. I was just in St. Louis back in December and drove all around downtown. It was pretty nice. However, all St. Louisians reminded me I did not visit the absolute worst parts of St. Louis, which are on the north end of town, up here. Maybe next time. Our next stop along our ghetto tour of America brings us to the West Coast for the first time, to Oakland, California. Now, what stands out in Oakland is the poverty level. The Bay Area is a notoriously expensive place to live, where people who make great salaries still struggle to make ends meet. Here in Oakland, the poverty level is exactly 100th lowest, meaning, as an entire city, on paper, it's not very poor. There's a lot of parts of Oakland where wealthy younger millennials live, those who cannot afford to live across the bay in San Francisco. And then there's the rest of Oakland. There's large parts of the city where people do live in poverty. In some neighborhoods, that number is nearly half. It's also estimated that about 2% of all housing units in Oakland are considered public housing, or projects. So Oakland is the haves and the have-nots. Crime-wise, Oakland ranks 16th in the nation for everything from murders to car thefts, and 71% of Oakland is considered not white. Add them all up, and Oakland is a true American ghetto. I've seen most of the worst Oakland areas. I mean, you go to an A's or Raiders game at Oakland Alameda County Coliseum, and you walk over a bridge, and this whole area here is filled with bums, beggars, scam artists, and hoodlums. You learn not to make eye contact with them, and you just get on the train and head home. Get a superstar, that is what you are. Coming from afar, reaching for the stars. Run away with me to another place. We're not going too far for our next ghetto stop. This is Stockton, California. Of course, Stockton ranks high in terms of its minority population. California ranks second, only behind Hawaii for number of minorities in the state. In fact, California is one of 4 states with a minority majority, meaning the white population is lower than the minority population. Here in Stockton, the Hispanic population's 40%, which is only 50th. But if you look at California's Central Valley as a whole, 5 of the top 50 are in this region, primarily due to the large number of farms. Most of the Hispanics here are Mexicans. Poverty-wise, Stockton isn't that high. It ranks only in the top 25%. But violence here is terrible. Stockton ranks 10th in America for number of violent crimes per capita. Now, homelessness, trash being thrown on the streets, rude people, high unemployment, gangs. Stockton has all of those things. We didn't measure them, but they support Stockton's ranking.
One of my best friends, Juan, grew up in Stockton, but Mappy shot him.
I don't think Mappy shot Juan. He left him in Memphis and he got shot on his own. We'll be talking about Memphis later in this video though, Mrs. Mappy.
Can we look for Juan? I think he might still be alive.
Yeah, we'll look for him. I promise. Alright, well that's kind of sad. Now we have to go and we have all this pressure to find Karen's ex-boyfriend. But for now, it's time to visit one of our nation's most infamous ghettos, Baltimore. Here in Baltimore, things are not going very well. It's the 4th most violent place in the nation, and Baltimore rival St. Louis is having the nation's most murders per capita. Poverty-wise, it ain't pretty here. Overall, like in Oakland, there's high earners here, putting Baltimore only in the top 25% poverty-wise. But going back to our original housing project numbers, we can see that Baltimore ranks 3rd in the US for number of public housing as a percentage of all housing. More than 3% of all homes here are set aside for low-income residents. Baltimore's ghetto is so notorious that HBO set its hit series The Wire in West Baltimore. There are simply some really sad areas here and some very desperate people here too. I've visited Baltimore twice. The first time I stayed downtown, which at night is eerily quiet. I walked down to look at Camden Yards and I was totally alone. It was a pretty clean downtown and there are some really nice restaurants along the waterfront. But then I got on a train to go to DC and like 2 exits out of downtown and it was bleak. Like mile after mile of terrible looking neighborhoods. The second time I went to Baltimore, I pulled over to let my driver go to the bathroom. We chose a Burger King in a really bad area. The parking lot had about a dozen really shady people hanging out. We didn't feel safe at all. They just watched us, looking a bit puzzled at how naive we were. Anyways, it's places like Baltimore which motivated President Trump to state in a campaign stop in 2016, our African American communities are absolutely in the worst shape that they've ever been in before. You take a look at the inner cities, you get no education, you get no jobs, you get shot walking down the street. So anyway, Trump's appointed former Baltimore resident Dr. Ben Carson as our nation's Secretary of Housing and Urban Development to try to fix the problem. We're wishing him success. Hartford may not be a place you hear of very often, unless you're from Connecticut, then you know Hartford very well. Could Hartford be a worse ghetto than Baltimore? Well, if you're measuring ghetto statistics, then yes. Hartford has an 85% minority population. It's the nation's 9th poorest city, and it ranks 26th for violent crimes. Everything but the crime numbers are higher than Baltimore. Now here's a couple of examples of how statistics may disprove our stereotypes of modern American cities. The city with the most property crimes in the nation is Las Vegas, primarily due to the large number of casinos. But income levels in Vegas are far from low. And in Brownsville, Texas, the minority population's the 4th highest in the nation at 95%, and the poverty levels are massive. But it's relatively safe in Brownsville in comparison to the cities we've been talking about. Anyways, back to Hartford. It carries the nickname Homicide Hartford for good reason. There's been a lot of racial tension here, and if you're not from the Northeast, you probably haven't even heard anything about it. Cleveland isn't really going to shock anybody by making this list. Ohio's most infamous city has lost 120,000 people in the last 20 years. Here's why. It's the 2nd poorest city in the nation to start. 35% of the people here live in poverty, and Cleveland has the most children that live in poverty in the entire country. Crime-wise, it ain't pretty either. The 216 ranks 9th in the US for violent crimes, where there were 120 murders here the last 2 years running. Of course, a big problem's been the huge industrial job losses and a continuous string of corrupt Democrat politicians and mayors. I visited Cleveland once. Downtown wasn't the worst, it was a little rough around the edges. But East Cleveland is scary. I pulled over to let the dogs go to the bathroom and realized I was in a housing project. And just like in Baltimore, they all kind of just looked at me like, what's this crazy white boy doing in our hood? Bone Thugs and Harmony hailed from Cleveland. Annie's not from here though. It's a hard knock life for us. It's a hard knock life for us. Instead of treated, we get tricked. Instead of kisses, we get kicked. It's a hard knock life. Coming in fourth on our list is San Bernardino, California. What the? That's my hometown. Well, I can surely attest that things in San Bernardino have certainly gone downhill. This was once a pretty cool place, and then LA reject trash took over, and it's been miserable ever since. Now for all of you YouTube commenters that say I'm entitled, or that I'm an elitist who has nothing else to do but look down on others' misfortunes, you can all just back the F up. You know what? I'm calling my mom. I bet she has something to say about this. So how has San Bernardino changed, or is it worse, or what's going on out there?
It's just that everything is, the streets are a wreck. It's very sad because that used to be a beautiful neighborhood.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of San Bernardino's getting worse, huh?
The streets are in terrible shape. Terrible.
Yeah.
And the trash is, there's a lot of trash blowing around, and there's just too many homeless people over there.
Yeah.
They're desperate, and they can't get city services. It's really sad.
What about crime?
I was just reading about it. They're after somebody is just randomly parking and shooting people over on the west side. They're saying it's drug related. I don't know. A lot of shootings going down. Like seems like every 2 to 3 weeks, there's a homicide.
Well, all right. Well, it was good talking to you. I'll call you again in a couple days. All right.
Love you.
Love you. Bye. There you go. My mom said it all. Bye, Mom. Back to the East Coast we go again as we come to Paterson, New Jersey. Now, Paterson's the only city on this list I've never been to, but it's actually a real ghetto according to the definition. Paterson was once home to a Jewish population that numbered 40,000 people. And remember, the original term ghetto referred to Jewish neighborhoods. Today, Paterson ranks 5th for its minority population, and most of that population is Hispanic. It's the 10th poorest city in the country too, where poverty levels are double the national average. However, Paterson's crime numbers aren't as high as they once were, which means maybe Paterson is becoming less ghetto than it once was. Memphis, Tennessee is our second most ghetto city. It's outright terrible for crime here. It's the 3rd most violent city in the nation, and it also ranks 5th for number of property crimes per capita. North Memphis is particularly bad. Some have called it the most dangerous community in the nation. Graceland, on the city's south side, is sadly a really rundown area. Gangs are so bad in Memphis that there's a Wikipedia page about it. Is there hope for Memphis? Of course, motivated community members are always looking for change. Just recently, a community member discussed the crime and blight and the lack of youth opportunities here. It's going to take everybody in the community to make this work and get our communities back to neighborhoods where we know our neighbors and we know the kids in the neighborhood. That's how I grew up, and that's a place we need to get back to.
Juan, are you okay? It's Mappy. Z. I'm taking Juan out of here, you Memphis gangbanger.
No, you're not, Mappy. Juan is my prisoner.
Of course, many of you probably guessed Detroit would be at the top of this list. Michigan's crown jewel ranks 1st for poverty, 1st for violent crimes, and 7th for its minority population, where 90% of its residents are not white. Detroit's trying. Its downtown area is seeing major improvements, but as we've documented many times before, there's large parts of the city that do not look like America, at least America of the olden days. If you're curious as to which cities barely miss the top 10, places like Baton Rouge, Jackson, Mississippi, Shreveport, Louisiana, Houston, and New Orleans are all up there too. That's 3 cities in Louisiana. And you might be curious as to which places are the least ghetto big cities in the USA. They are Naperville, Illinois, Thousand Oaks, California, Gilbert, Arizona, and Cary, North Carolina. Hey, I live right next door to Cary. I guess I'm moving on up. So that's it, our ghetto tour of America. Hope you got your fix, you YouTube weirdos. Now, to keep our karma in check, I wanted to bring up volunteering. If you're looking for a way to give back, consider helping the senior community. There's programs already in place that you can contact if you want to donate your time and energy to help senior citizens. You'll probably make some new friends, and you'll brighten somebody's life too. Now the world don't move to the beat of just one drum. What might be right for you may not be right for some. A man is born, not a man of means. Then along comes you, and he's like, I'm looking out for me, 'cause it takes ghetto folks, it takes ghetto folks, it takes ghetto folks to ruin the world. And everybody's got a special kind of story. Everybody finds a way to get by. It don't matter that I got not a lot. That's fine, you have yours and they have theirs, and I'll take mine. Then my family will be fine, 'cause it takes ghetto folks to ruin the world. Yes, it does. It takes ghetto folks to ruin the world. Is there hope in San Bernardino? Are they trying to fix things?
If they get rid of the mayor and get a city council that have some more young blood, yeah.
All right, well, you stay safe out there. Oh, and hey, for the record, do I live in your basement?
No, you do not.
All right, I had to clear that up because there's a lot of people that say I live in your basement.
No way. We're not even in the same state, people.
Yeah. Hey guys, if you learned something new or you just like this video, make sure to like it. And if you really like this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get all of our videos about what it's like to live in different places in America. Peace.